All right.
Parsha Korach for tonight is Numbers 16:31 to Numbers 18:32. And then if you're reading the Haftarah, which is, I think I've explained to you before, but the Haftarah is anything out of the Nevi'im, or what we call the prophets. And their prophets are different than ours. And you say, what do you mean? 1st and 2nd Samuel is the prophets. We don't usually call those books the prophets. We would call those the narrative or the story part of the Tanakh, but they call it the prophets. And so the Haftarah, or the section out of the prophets that they would read for this Shabbat, is 1 Samuel chapter 11, verses 14 to chapter 12, verses 22. And so again, in there, it's a similar passage to this one, because in this one, in this particular passage, and we're not going to have time to read all of the Parsha, but in this passage, Moshe tells the congregation, he says, have I ever done anything wrong? Have I ever stole a donkey from you? Have I ever lied to you? Have I ever done all these things? And of course the congregation says no. And he says, I testify before you this day that if you don't follow God, God's going to judge you. But if you'll follow God, God is going to bless you. Well, that's exactly how it begins there in 1 Samuel. Samuel the prophet says the same thing to the people. Have I ever stolen a donkey from you? Have I ever? And so that's why these two particular passages go together, is because they're very similar in their wording. But it says here that Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, so he's one of the Levites, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Peleth. And then he tells us who all these people are, Dathan and Abiram and On. They are sons of Reuben, which of course is the first son of the children of Israel, first of the 12 sons. It says that they took men, and they rose up before Moshe with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation. And when it says famous there, I was kind of curious, what word would they use? And it uses the word kara or kare, which kare is when you call out loud to somebody. So in other words, these are very, very well known in the community kind of people. I mean, really, really well known. And so he says that they were famous in the congregation, men of renown. It says they gathered themselves together against Moshe and against Aharon, and said unto them, you take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation. And when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face. And he spake unto Korach and unto all his company, saying, even tomorrow the Lord will show you who are his, and who is holy, and will cause him to come near unto him, even him whom he hath chosen will he cause to come near unto him. This do, take you censers, Korach and all his company, and put fire therein, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord doth choose, he shall be holy. Of course, the word holy, kadosh, means to be separated. And so anybody who is holy is separated unto something. And for us as children of the Most High God, we're separated unto God. That's why we're holy, is because we're set apart for Him. It says, you take too much upon you, ye sons of Levi. And Moshe said unto Korach, hear I pray you, ye sons of Levi, seemeth it but a small thing unto you, and this is where I want to focus tonight, seemeth it but a small thing unto you, that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto them. Is it a small thing that God's chosen you out to do this great service? Now, if we have time, we'll try to get into it here a little bit later tonight, but what was the thing that they were after? Well, Korach and his people were upset that Aaron is the high priest. And he thinks that he should be the high priest. Now, I don't know if you've ever been around people like that, but to me, as I thought about this story and the details of this story, I thought to myself, how much that is like humankind in general, isn't it? We have some good standing, we have some great things happening in our life, and when all the good things are going on in our life, what do we want? More, better, faster, newer car, whatever it is. We never learn to be content. We never learn to accept that where we're at in life, we're in a good place. We always think, no, it could be better. I could be the leader. I could be doing this, and I could be like Aaron. Everybody looks up to me and says, I'm such a wonderful guy, and I've got this great job. I'm the one who gets to offer the sacrifices for the whole tribe of Israel and for the world as well. And so they raise up a stink among the people and basically raise up an army to go and to challenge him for his position of leadership. Now, I know this to be true. I've seen it enough in my lifetime. Usually somebody instigates something. And they start talking to somebody and they start reminding them about how bad they've got it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Your life isn't as good as you think it is. And why is it the boss always treats that person better? Right, Brother Martine? Those teachers all get treated better than I do, or maybe that administrator is getting treated better, or he's getting paid more, I've heard about it. Or I accidentally saw his pay stub, and he's definitely getting paid more than I'm getting. And somehow now your life is unfair. You forget about what you're actually getting. You forget about how many other people don't have what you have, and yet you just don't have enough. You just aren't in that place where you're really having the blessings on you. And so as I was looking at this story, I thought it was interesting because it does go through and it lists for us all these people that are having these complaints. And when we get over to, let me see if I can find it in my notes here. I title it this way intentionally because I am kind of being slightly tongue-in-cheek. But how poorly were the Levites treated? You say, poorly? Yeah, because that's what they're complaining about, aren't they? We're not getting treated fairly. Now, realize that under that banner of the Levite family, of course, there were three sons. There's Kohath, and there's Merari, and there's Gershon. And so those three sons have all been given duties to do by God. It tells us over in Numbers chapter 3 and verse 23, if you turn over there quickly. Numbers chapter 3 and verse 23, it's going to tell us some of their duties. Numbers chapter 3, verse 23, it says, the families of the Gershonites shall pitch behind the tabernacle westward, and the chief of the house of the father of the Gershonites shall be Eliasaph, the son of Lael. And the charge of the sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of the congregation shall be the tabernacle and the tent, the covering thereof, and the hanging for the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the hangings of the court, and the curtain for the door of the court, which is by the tabernacle, and by the altar round about, and the cords of it, for all the service thereof. So what do they have? They have a lot of responsibilities. They're the one who gets to carry all the coverings that make up the tent. And it says the hangings of the court, and as some of you may be aware, that around the outskirts of the tent itself proper, what we call the ochel, it's the Hebrew word for tent, but outside of that there's a fence all the way around. That fence is nearly 8 feet high, and it has white curtains on these beautiful brass knobs with silver bases on them, pure silver. I mean, beautiful, beautiful fence. And what do they get to do? They get to carry all those curtains, and they get to set them up and take them down each time. They get to throw all the coverings over top of the tabernacle each time. They get to build the outermost curtain and the innermost curtain and hang them up every time that they settle down, and every time that they go to move on. They get to do all that duty. But it's not enough. And then we move on to verse 29 where it says, the families of the son of Kohath shall pitch on the side of the tabernacle southward, and the chief of the house of the father of the families of the Kohathites shall be Elizaphan, the son of Uzziel, and their charge shall be the ark and the table and the candlestick and the altars and the vessels of the sanctuary wherewith they minister, and the hanging and all the service thereof. And Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest shall be chief over the chief of the Levites, and have oversight of them that keep the charge of the sanctuary. Now think about it. They've even got a really cool job, and you say, what is that? They get to take care of all of the tabernacle furniture that's predominantly made out of gold on the inside of the building. All of it. That's their job, is to carry it on their shoulders from place to place to place, set it up, tear it down, set it up, tear it down. But they get to carry the most precious of the things that they have, the most valuable of the things that are had. And again, I want to go back to who we have the problem with. Who is Korach? He's a Kohathite. His family is the one who carries all that furniture that's made out of solid gold. Well, gold overlay, I should say, because it's wood with gold overlay, but a lot of money, a lot of beauty there. Now, by the way, they don't get to cover it. They just get to carry it. You say, why is that? Because only one's allowed to go in there to cover it. Aaron has to go in and cover all the furniture first with the proper curtains over it, and then they get to bear it without ever seeing it. But they get to bear all this stuff. And what does Korah say? It's not enough. It's just not enough. It's just not fair. I should be the one offering the sacrifices. I shouldn't be carrying all these gold furniture items on my shoulders. I should be the high priest himself. Now, it goes on to say, let's see, that was Kohath. It says in verse 33, of Merari was the family of the Mahlites and the family of the Mushites. These are the families of Merari, and those that were numbered of them, according to the number of all the males from a month old and upward, were 6,200. And it tells us in verse 36, under the custody and charge of the sons of Merari shall be the boards of the tabernacle, and the bars thereof, and the pillars thereof, and the sockets thereof, and all the vessels thereof, and all that serveth thereto, and the pillars of the court round about, and their sockets, and their pins, and their cords. Now the one family had the charge of all the curtains that hang up. This family has the charge of actually the fence posts that go all the way around. This family also has the charge, and I don't have the tabernacle up here right now, a model that I can show you, but I can tell you how it was made. There are wood posts that go this way. They go horizontally, and they're stacked on each other. And they have little loops on each side of them, on each board all the way down, and there's bars running through those loops, and that's what holds the tabernacle together while they have it built and while they're using it. And their job is to carry all these gold-covered boards and all these pins and all these bars and all this specialty equipment and set it up and take it down each time. But again, what's the problem with the Kohathites? It's not enough. I'm just saying all the Levites had a special job. And not only that, they had something that nobody else had. The rest of the tribes of Israel didn't get to carry any of this stuff. The only time they ever got to come into the tabernacle was to offer sacrifices. They never actually got to have daily service there. They never got to smell the incense burning on the altar on a regular basis. They never got to be there to see all of the sacrifices going on. They never got to see the glory of God up close, sitting on top of the tabernacle. They could see it from afar, but never had that close relationship. And yet, here we find one of the families is not happy about their situation. By the way, there's another family that we already mentioned that you may have forgotten about. Does anybody remember which family that is that's also represented in the story that's not happy? Well, if we go back to chapter 16 and verse 1, it says, Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the sons of Peleth, sons of Reuben. Who's Reuben?
Oldest boy.
He's the oldest boy. He's the firstborn. And you say, well, what about Reuben? What of Reuben? What's his deal? Why does his people have a beef in this situation? Well, Reuben's the firstborn. What's the firstborn get?
Double portion.
Well, he gets a double portion, and that's true. He gets a blessing, and that's true. But Reuben, it says in Genesis 49:3, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. Now, I love when Jacob's going through and blessing his sons because he tells you both sides about them. He tells you all are good, and he tells you they're bad. He doesn't mince words. Right. But about his son Reuben, who's his firstborn, he says, my might, that's, my power, my strength. And he says, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity. He's going through all these wonderful things, the excellency of power. He says, but he's unstable as water. He's unstable as water. Thou shalt not excel because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. What's his complaint? His complaint is his son took liberties he never had the right to. Yes, he's the firstborn, but it doesn't mean he gets to do what he wants to do. Now we have sons of Reuben who are upset what? They don't get to do what they want to do. By the way, this storyline follows throughout the Bible, not just in the story of these lives, but in many other lives as well. Who was never satisfied with the women in his own community? Shimshon or Samson? Who was not considerate or appreciative of the fact that they were the king's kids? Well, David's sons. Multiple of his sons decided to take him on to vie for him for the kingship. And after David is done with all of them vying for the kingship, and he says, no, this is settled, I've got a guy. His name is Shlomo, Solomon. He said, he's my king now. We read right after he made him king, his brother. Huh?
Adonijah or something.
Adoniah, yeah. Adoniah says what? He goes to Bathsheba, which is not his mom. Yeah. That's Solomon's mom. He goes to Bathsheba, can you ask of your son just a special opportunity for me?
Abishag.
Yeah. He said, I want my dad's concubine. The one that used to keep him warm before he passed away. That's who I want to marry.
Yeah.
What was his problem? Same thing here with Korach. Yeah. Some people are just so convinced that I've missed out, that I haven't gotten everything that I should have gotten in this life.
Yeah.
And because they never learn this truth of contentment, they're always grasping for things that they can't have. And ultimately, it's very destructive. Every one of the lives that I just recounted for you, their lives end in all kinds of destruction. Why? Because they're never content with what they have. They're always convinced that what somebody else has is supposed to be theirs. What somebody else has is supposed to be theirs. There's a reason why over in Philippians chapter 4, Paul says this, but I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein you were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity. And then he says, not that I speak in respect of want. For I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. To be content.
Good. Amen.
Now, I can tell you that when we go through a lot of the scriptures, when we go through the Ecclesiastes, you know, the preacher's book, what do we see in there even? He says that's what everybody thinks. They think if I just had more. He said, I had that opportunity. I was the richest, wisest king that ever lived. Yep. And he said, whatever my heart wanted, I gave it to it. But he said, I found out it was empty. It wasn't all I thought it was going to be. Right. It didn't bring the peace. It didn't bring the joy. It didn't bring the happiness that I was looking for. And he ends his diatribe after talking about all the things that he chased after. He talks about how he created all kinds of wonderful gardens and how he had slaves that gave birth to their children in his home. And how he had, different slaves that had lots and lots of kids, and he got to have the joy of having all these kids without them being his kids. But he said, when you're seeking all these things, or trying to add all these things to your life, and you think, well, my building projects, that's going to make me happy. My garden's going to make me happy. No. It's the forest that I'm going to plant. That's going to make me happy. No. It's the fruit trees. That's what it's going to be to make me happy. He finally says, and what is the conclusion of the matter?
Fear God.
He said, fear God. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the whole of man. This is what your aim is. This is what your goal is. Fear God and keep His commandments. And these men, whether we're talking about the sons of Reuben, whether we're talking about the sons of Kohath, they weren't content with all the blessings that God had given them. And I can promise you, even if you're the poorest person sitting in this room right now, you have more than a good part of the world does.
Yep, you're right.
I feel lucky, I honestly do. I sometimes wish that everybody had to be part of the military at some point in your life. You say, why? Because I'm sure this happened for Phil, but for me, I got to travel the world. And I got to see what the best the rest of the world has.
Right.
And the people in the United States, the least of us, has more than most people in other countries. In most countries. I'm not saying all, but we have more than most countries have. Even the least of us. And yet, what are we constantly saying? Well, I'm 200% above poverty level. Give me a break. When I was growing up, my parents checked into it at one point. We had 5 of us kids. We were all teenagers at the same time. So you can imagine what it was like to live in our home. You say, what was it like? Well, it was like living with locusts. My mom would bring the groceries home and they would disappear. And then she'd go back to the store and bring more groceries home and they would disappear as fast as she could unload them out of the car. It really was like that. You know, when you have all teenagers and there's 5 of you, they're like locusts. They can eat stuff as fast as you can set it on the counter. But my parents said when they were checking into it, that we all wanted to get jobs and our parents were happy to try to help us to get jobs. They thought we should learn to work young. I started learning to work on the farm there at 12. I started working outside of the farm around 12, 13, 14. Started working for the neighbor farmers. Started working for anybody that give me anything. I even remember one lady, I don't know why she used to do it to me. It used to drive me crazy, but she had to pay me by putting the coins. She'd pay me to take her garbage out. And she'd give me, I don't remember what it was. Let's say it was 25 cents or something. She wouldn't just hand me a quarter. She'd put it in a cat dish on the back door of her house. You know where the cat ate the food out of? So it'd always have that dried up food in the bottom of the dish. And she's throwing quarters in there for me, sister. You say that's pretty humiliating? It was. But my parents taught me to work. Yeah. And when they started looking into it, I actually applied to get one of the government jobs they had downtown where, you know, we had to sweep streets and do that kind of stuff. I said, I can do that. We qualified. But my parents said that we weren't going to be taken care of or made wealthy or even helped by the government. They said, if we can't do it by our family working, we just won't have it. That's the way I grew up. If we couldn't do it with the power of the people that were in the family, if we couldn't take care of each other, if we couldn't provide for each other, if we couldn't find a way to make a living, we just didn't need it, is what we figured. And now we've got people standing out there with handouts and constantly saying, what? You robbed me. You stole from me. You've made my life miserable. And people haven't done anything to them. What's their problem? They're looking for a handout instead of chasing down every opportunity they can get and trying to get somewhere. And always expecting somebody else to give them this ideal position, this ideal place, this ideal standing in the community. And that's their problem. They can't learn to accept that maybe the position that you're in might be the best you can get, but if it's not, keep striving. But again, don't realize that we're not a socialist. Well, maybe we are a socialist nation, but we didn't start out one. You say, what's a socialist nation? That's where they look for equity for everybody. Or excuse me, not equity, equality. You say, what's equality? Everybody gets exactly the same thing. Is that really how you want life to be? The people that stand out there or sit out there on their porches all day long and pass time watching the cars drive by, and you want them to make what you make when you go out and work 60 hours a week? Is that really how you want life to be? That's not the way God wants it to be. God says if a person, a man, shall not work, he shall not eat. What's the motivation to work? Hunger. Amen. It motivated us when I was a kid. I liked having my own money. You say, why? Because if I didn't think I got enough off of the table at home, because I mowed lawns and I worked for the Chevy dealerships guy's mom and I worked for these other people and I humbly took my quarter out of that cat dish for taking out the lady's garbage and all. I'm telling you, I found all kinds of jobs as a kid. They didn't all pay a lot of money, but I always had something. I always had something. And God is looking for people to be content with their station in life and realize that Not all of us are going to be the king's son. And even when we are, trying to get above being the king's son, no, I want to be the king, like Adoniah wanted to be. He wasn't content to just be in the royal family. His brother is the king, but that's not enough. Do you think privileges came with his brother being the king? Absolutely. Is there privileges to a young man that we heard about in the news just recently and his dad being the president? You think that there's any benefits to him being the son of the president? Of course there are. But I'm saying that may not be everybody's lot in life, and there's got to be a point where we begin to realize that God has something higher for us, and that's doing what? Learning to be content, and learning that more important than having something or having some station in life is to learn to fear God and do the things that God wants us to do, because ultimately that's the only thing that's going to give us peace anyway. When we chase after the lust of this flesh, and I promise you that even aspiring to be the king of the land is the lust of the flesh. All those things are a lust of the flesh. Does it mean we shouldn't have any kings? I'm not saying that. But there can only be one. And a lot of times we're seeking after things that we never can be. And then complaining about our situation in life, when God has blessed us greatly. He's blessed us greatly. If we go back into the story, by the way, the entire family of Korach and his wife and his children, they all die. Everything in the tent. God opens up the earth, swallows them all. Over what? I just don't have enough. I'm tired of carrying these gold furniture items. I want to do something greater. I want to be the one that offers the sacrifices. I'm glad Zacharias wasn't like that. The dad of John the Baptist, we read about him. We know that he drew straws, and his job one day was to go in and offer incense. Who gave him that? God did, because it was done by lot. Nobody said, Zacharias, you get to burn incense today. God did, through the lot, through them casting lots. He happened to be the guy who got the job that day. And sometimes there's got to be a point where we come in life where we stop chasing after stupid stuff, grasping for straws, always wanting better. But that may not always be God's will. By the way, I'm not telling you to be poor. I think that God does bless some people with wealth. But I think generally He does it for people, I think sometimes, that can handle it. I've met too many people that are terrible with money, but they want God to curse them with more. You all know what I'm talking about? I just never have enough. I know I'm horrible with it. I keep losing it at Potawatomi, but if I had more, I probably wouldn't lose it there. You're lying to yourself. You're deceiving yourself. Unfortunately, I've known too many people that have given their houses to Potawatomi. And I'm quite serious.
To what?
Potawatomi, it's a casino downtown here.
Oh.
I've known of people that ultimately mortgaged their houses to the point of where they didn't have any equity in their houses. They gave their houses to Potawatomi. It wasn't because God wanted to let them win $1 million. It's because they never learned to be content. They just were always enamored with this idea. One of these days I'm going to hit it big. One of these days my life is going to get better. Now, by the way, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket here. God does want to bless us. But the blessings that we're seeking sometimes are only the things that this flesh is telling us is a blessing, not what God says is a blessing. God says that godliness with contentment is great gain. That's not what the world's searching for. It's not what they're seeking. And it's why they'll never find it. Because they're not being spiritual. They can keep searching, they can keep going out to the parties, they can keep trying to get bigger houses and bigger boats and better cars, but it's not going to bring them the peace that they're seeking. It's not going to bring the joy that they're seeking. I know plenty of people that drive beaters and they're quite content. I even know millionaires that drive beaters. Y'all know any millionaires? Yeah. It's funny to me because there's people that say, no, I've never met a millionaire. I've known a lot of them in my lifetime. At least millionaires, sometimes probably more than that. We used to have one that lived in our trailer court. You say, how did he make it big? He got into cable TV in the early days. Made a lot of money off cable TV because everybody wants to watch their show. That was a long time ago. That was back in the 70s. But he made his killing off of people wanting cable TV. But a lot of those people that actually do well at that, where they become millionaires, they're very careful with their money. They're not stupid with it, and yet everybody else goes, why can't I be like him? And then we have people trying to get us into class envy and saying, we should just take all his money away and give it to the people who are bad with it.
Yeah.
Really? We should take all the money from the people that actually know how wisely to use money and invest it, and give it to the people that are really bad with money. Does that seem like a good idea, Brother Doug? It sure doesn't to me. It sounds stupid to me. But I think it might have something to do with, I've been reading the Bible today about what God says about these things. And there's so many people that listen to the world and the news and the government and the politicians who are telling everybody what you're missing out on.
Right.
They're lying to you. They're deceiving you. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Amen.
Amen.
Godliness with contentment. We could go more into this story, but I don't want to keep you long. But whole families lost out on this because of somebody letting their desire for better consume their lives. And when I say consume, sometimes literally consume their lives. I think even of poor Shimshon, as his parents said, isn't there never a girl good enough in our community? And he said, no, that Philistine girl, she pleaseth me well. And as I've explained to you before, in the Hebrew, it says, to my eye, she's good. That's not why you take a woman or a man as your spouse. It is because to your eye, they're good. No, it better be more than that. It better be because you found a spiritual mate that's going to love God like you do, going to walk with God like you do, going to obey God like you do. And if they don't, you're unequally yoked and you're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble, and there's a lot of people out there like that expect to start a marriage on the wrong foot, but somehow it's gonna go places that they've dreamed about all their lives. Again, that's stupid. You're going the wrong way. Amen. Well, I think we'll stop there tonight. Any questions?